Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Great Shot Kid, the podcast on the Nerd Party that looks at the creative and inspirational aspects of the Star Wars galaxy. I am one of your hosts, John Mills, and with me by special arrangement of the trade negotiations at Naboo is my good friend, Shawn Eastridge. Shawn, welcome to Great Shot Kid.
Thank you for having me. This is the first time, and I guarantee you it'll be the last time.
I wouldn't guarantee that, but I do thank you for being here.
No, I'm happy to be here.
You're the first guest host, I think, on Great Shot Kid.
Really? Well, all right. I'll take it.
No, are you?
What are we talking about? Yes. Let's not question.
You know
it.
what?
Let's just go
say
with
so.
it.
Let's just
and
say
let's
so.
discuss. Let's discuss cash prizes.
Cash prizes. A shiny nickel from everybody that wants you to come back next time. So
all I've ever wanted.
So
oh, great. Oh, wait. So I might not be getting a nickel.
So before we get started this week, of course, we're on thenerdparty.com. If you want to reach out to the show, thenerdparty.com/contact. You can reach out to us on Twitter at Join Nerd Party and on Instagram at The Nerd Party and on Facebook at facebook.com/thenerdparty. And feel free to use the hashtag Great Shot Kid, and that'll get to us, and we'll know that you're talking about us, and we appreciate it. So, all of that out of the way, we recently lost a Star Wars luminary, the costume designer John Mollo. And so he did the costumes for Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, among myriad other films, through a somewhat distinguished career. And so I think the best way to go off, we know what you think of Star Wars. Everybody knows what everybody thinks of Star Wars at this point. The costumes, though, I want to get a sense from you. I know how it was when I was a kid, what costumes I responded to most, and what character look I liked the best. When you were coming up and you saw Star Wars for the first time, what was the costume where when you looked at it, you were like, that is an awesome outfit? What's the one that you gave the thumbs up?
I don't think there's any question that I think Darth Vader for so many people was just like, what is this? Like, I've never, ever seen anything like this, ever. I mean, it was just like, I remember being a kid and just being so awestruck by that and terrified. I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself. I was so scared. It made such an impression on me.
Wow.
But it's just, I mean, that is an iconic look at this point in our lives and everyone's lives. You can't not know Darth Vader and what that costume looks like. But I remember that one standing out. I always loved Return of the Jedi was my first Star Wars movie, and I always loved Luke's just dark outfit, his just completely black outfit, which not too complicated costume wise, but I remember I used to try to mimic it. And my mom caught me a couple times trying to dress like Luke Skywalker on the way to church, and she did not approve. I couldn't get a robe, unfortunately.
Okay, so that's kind of funny because obviously then you weren't Catholic, because Luke's outfit looks very much like a priest in Return of the Jedi.
See, I could have pulled that. I think I should have used that as an excuse to convert, because then I could have gotten away with it. But no, I think Darth Vader especially, but there's so many iconic looks in these movies that I think about, and as a kid especially, you start to just dig through your closet for ways to match it. Like Han Solo's another good one with the vest and the white shirt, because they were so simple. Everything was so simple, but the brilliance of Star Wars, as many people have talked about, is how it evoked the real world. It felt lived in. It felt like things you could kind of put together yourself, and that's exactly what I think is so striking about this stuff. It's these costumes are iconic, and the designs and everything, you could pick it out in a clothing store and just be like, oh, absolutely. Wait, why is a clothing store selling Jedi robes? I don't know why. They should be, though. But I just remember being so struck by the simplicity of it, and yet how memorable it was.
See, it's interesting to me because, I think a lot of people overlook the costumer. And even when they're talking about Star Wars, they overlook the costumer unfairly, because everybody's able to look at and cite, the Ralph McQuarrie paintings and the storyboards. And, everybody knows that is the birthplace of the actual designs. So going just back to that very first one, Mollo is given the task of, here are these really cool paintings, and you need to find a way to make the fabrics work and to make Vader's helmet work and to make these things work so that when you costume them, like you said, it looks like something somebody could actually wear. Because I think that's really the biggest stumbling block when you look at a lot of science fiction stuff, especially stuff that predates Star Wars, but even some stuff that's contemporary with it. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw it on, the sacrificial block here. But Star Trek: The Motion Picture, that is very much a victim of that thinking of, hey, it's space age futuristic stuff. Look at how they look. This is how I sketched it. And I'm not, throwing shade on the costumer per se, but I'm sure the costumer would have loved to be like, well, I'm going to do the best I can. So thanks, guys. This is what I got. This is what I got to work with.
It's funny. I mentioned Return of the Jedi specifically, which I don't think he was involved with.
No, he only did Star Wars and Empire, but Jedi is a descendant of his look.
Exactly. I mean, it's all coming from what he established in the first two movies.
Yeah.
But Star Wars and Empire, or Return of the Jedi, definitely has a cleaner look. It feels a little bit more. Feels a little bit more put together to me. Return of the Jedi, which I like. It's not my favorite of the three movies, but I always felt it carried kind of an aura of. This is going to sound like a negative thing, and I guess it kind of is, but it kind of carries this aura of artificiality to me, where the first two Star Wars movies feel very real to me. The third one feels a little bit more staged, and I think that speaks to his power and what he accomplished as a costume designer, is to come up with things that really do feel like they're reality based, or that they feel like they are of a actual existing world. And I don't know, do you get that vibe? Do you see that difference from Return to the first two? When
I look at it, I see the distinction I see is that I'm not a huge fan of Alan Hume's cinematography in Return of the Jedi.
I agree with you there.
They switch the type of camera, and I think that the costumes don't look as realistic or lived in, specifically because the camera doesn't make them sing. That said, I think that there's a very conscious effort in a lot of the costumes in Return of the Jedi to have that put together feel. I know that, for instance, in that design process, as I recall from one of Rinsler's books, originally they were doing the Rebel sets in the same sort of aesthetic as the first two, where they're dingy and stuff like that. And Lucas came in at one point and said, no, they finally got their act together. This has got to look good. This is their moment. They've got it all worked out now, and that's why they look so good. This is their best foot forward. I'm paraphrasing here, but and probably adding on more to extrapolate, because Lucas was not a man of, many words. But
what was his direction? It was
faster, more intense.
Right.
Now, see, the thing is with the direction, what's interesting to me about that is that Mollo's actual quote is that he said, and this is a quote that's left on the IMDb page, "George left me in no doubt. Audience mustn't consciously notice the costumes," he insisted. "If they do, you have gone wrong." So Mike and I just did this whole series where we were talking about iconic shots from the original trilogy, from the prequels, and then from the sequel trilogy. So all of the live action stuff. And of course, costuming, I guess you could argue, matters in the animated stuff, but we're not going to get into those semantics. Do you think that Mollo's aesthetic, do you see, I mean, obviously Jedi's descended from it, and you could even say that, well, I mean, he kind of costumed Jedi. Like, maybe the reason he didn't come back is because they've already got Vader, they've already got robes, they already know what all of these things are going to look like and everything. But
sure,
do you think that his aesthetic is reflected in the prequel trilogy? Or do you think that, because specifically this quote, audience mustn't consciously notice the costumes, but right out of the gate in episode 1, Amidala has, 3,000 costume changes.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a conscious decision on Lucas's part to maybe bring in some kind of just a little bit more, like some different visuals and aesthetics there, because I remember as a kid, I think if I had been a little bit older and a little bit more discerning at the time, it might have upset me a little bit more, just because it is such a strikingly different aesthetic from what we've been used to. But I remember as a kid just thinking like, oh, that's kind of cool. It looks different. But you do see his influence everywhere else as far as the costumes go. I mean, you see it in the Jedi robes. You see it with Anakin. I really enjoyed. I think I'm in a minority here, but I enjoy Episode 1 the most of the 3 prequels, and part of that is I think it ties closely as far as from a visual standpoint to the original trilogy for me. I see the connection between the two, and I think a lot of it may be the fact that they spend some time on Tatooine, that it was filmed on film, and I don't think there was as much green screen use, but I think the connection with the costumes too, and I really am thinking of the stuff that you see on Tatooine you see the influence. And again, it's because that he laid it out in the first 2 movies, and Phantom Menace to keep things connected and keep it recognizable absolutely pulled from that.
So here's a question for you, okay? Because Mollo undoubtedly shaped the look of the characters, shaped the look of everything that we have come to love about Star Wars. And when you have a movie series, okay, we've gone into the sequel trilogy, and Lucas is not directly involved in them, but he still gets his credit, based on characters and everything by George Lucas. And Mollo did the costumes for Alien. And one of the big points about the Alien sequels is H.R. Giger. Giger? That's how you pronounce his last name?
Geiger.
I said Geiger for the longest time, and then I heard Giger.
If you don't pronounce his name correctly, he will haunt your dreams. I think that is something
I'm in for a rough night. Yeah. but Giger winds up suing and winning because of the sequels, because he's like, that's my Alien. I designed that. Yeah. I get money and credit for that. Why is it the costume designers get such the shaft on that? Because, again, Return of the Jedi, he's built the costumes already for half of the cast. And then there's the influence in... I mean, the Jedi robes are in all of them. So
it's
John Mollo's look is all over this thing. So
he should be getting some residual I see what you're saying there. H.R. Geiger, I wonder if it's because Geiger this is bad.
You're up
We're
for
both
nightmares
getting haunted
too
tonight. Yeah.
Good luck.
But I think in that case he was hired specifically to design this thing, and I feel like because he was like a conceptual artist and is so like kind of stands apart in the crew list, I wonder if costume designers are just kind of like, oh, but you're hired, and what you do we own. And Alien in particular, more so because Aliens is very militaristic, which I know Mollo, he has some kind of love and background with that kind of stuff, military stuff, and he has a fascination with that, which he brought into the costumes of like the Rebel Alliance and the Imperials in Star Wars. Yeah. But Alien, the first one, they all feel very lived in. Again, Alien kind of continued along the lines of the lived in future, taking it to an even larger extreme. But Alien, more so than the other two, feels very much like these are normal people. Like they're nothing fancy. They're not military. They're not monks on a creepy prison planet. It's not the quasi-futuristic like style that was in Alien Resurrection that felt more anime than anything else. But like Alien stands alone to me in terms of like, you feel like these are just normal people who kind of got thrown together onto a spaceship, and the vibe his costume design gives off in that movie reflects that and reinforces what Ridley Scott was trying to go for with that. And I don't know, I don't see his influence as much in the Alien sequels.
No.
Yeah, I mean, to bring it back to your question, I wonder if it's just because a conceptual artist, a name like Giger, I'm just going to go with Giger.
Go with Giger.
A name like that, when you say you have been brought on and, Alien designed by Giger, if you somehow get ownership of that, because technically it's like, does Jordan Cronenwest's family get any kind of residuals for Blade Runner 2049 for the work Roger Deakins did, clearly inspired by the cinematography in Blade Runner?
Point. That's a great point too.
I don't know. It might just be the fact that Giger created something that was then used, whereas everything else is in service of the film itself. in service of the director. Not that the alien or this design work isn't, but Giger was very specifically hired for a specific thing.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And the thing is, what's fascinating about Mollo is undoubtedly Star Wars, Alien, and Empire Strikes Back, just right out of the gate, amazing work, and shifts the whole genre, changes the expectation for science fiction. He then did another science fiction movie, the costumes for Outland, which is a Sean Connery still finding his way post Bond. Oof. That's a rough one if nobody's seen Outland.
So you're saying I need to see this?
Yeah, I would encourage. You know what? I would encourage it. I might maybe because Sean, for anybody that doesn't know, hosts Missing Frames, a delightful show here on the Nerd Party Network about movies people haven't seen. Maybe we've just signed up for Outland for Missing Frames because the last time
I'm looking at the poster now, and it's on the tagline is "On Jupiter's moon, he's the only law," and he's holding a shotgun.
I'd be terrified of Sean Connery with a shotgun. Full disclosure. I the only time I've seen it actually was on television as a kid, so I know that I saw a highly redacted version of it.
So you need a Blu-ray, 1080, 4K, something
4K
that
Ultra,
really emphasizes
Ultra HD
the beauty of this film.
But then he goes on. He does the costumes for Ghandi, which is a huge, critical darling in the '80s. So he is
and
really
best picture of that year, right?
Yeah, yes, and
that's right. It beat E.T.
Yep, and
even Richard Attenborough was like, E.T. Give it to E.T.
Well, I don't know, but I will say, we go through, and he's got this great career, but he also has done the costumes for some highly questionable films that I want to know if you've seen. I mean, he's done Ghandi. He did Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, which I remember as not being as well received as people expected back then. And, Revolution, Cry Freedom, White Hunter, Black Heart. He also did the costumes for Air America, the delightful gem with Mel Gibson and Robert Downey Jr.
Oh my
which
God.
I remember seeing on videotape and being outraged because it was a period piece, because it's about the mythical, the real, but its myth has grown by leaps and bounds, air program by the CIA, over in Vietnam. And,
right.
It's given these mythic proportions basically, but I remember specifically a point in the film where they had Love Me Two Times, and my favorite band is The Doors, and Love Me Two Times is playing, which was contemporary to the time, but it was a cover by Aerosmith playing in universe on the and I was so outraged as a Doors fan at the time. I was ready to just burn my video player.
Here are two fascinating things about Air America, perhaps the only two fascinating things about Air America.
Probably.
One, it was directed by Roger Spottiswoode, who did Tomorrow Never Dies, my first ever James Bond movie.
There you go.
Second, even more impressive, guess who was its cinematographer?
Who?
Roger Deakins.
No. I got to go back and watch this now.
We've got to watch another. That's
there you
another
go. That's another Missing
right
Frames
there.
right there. John Mollo, you keep giving even from beyond the grave. God bless you.
This is amazing. But
yeah.
So he did Air America, and then he followed up with another Robert Downey Jr. movie,
Chaplin.
Maybe arguably better. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe a little bit.
But he also directed by Richard Attenborough, which I also haven't seen, and I would love to see that.
But I haven't seen Chaplin either. But what's interesting to me is a lot of these things. This is what's fascinating. Is a lot of these things after he moves out of science fiction, a lot of this stuff is period piece.
Yeah,
he's doing all of this period piece stuff, and he doesn't get back to science fiction until 1997 with the truly execrable Event Horizon.
It's funny you say that, because I hear people have been coming out of the woodwork to be like, "Oh, Event Horizon,
no,
I like
they're
it."
all liars.
No?
They're all terrible, terrible liars.
Now, if I remember anything, I've never seen the movie, but I do remember the aesthetic of it and kind of the commercials, and things like that. And that one looked very sci-fi to me.
It's interesting because the aesthetic for it, as I'm thinking about it, is almost like a postmodernist sort of take on Alien, where it's like, oh, Alien, but a little cooler, man. And it's like, it's not cooler because Alien is plenty cool, and you just ruined the whole thing.
Yeah, you don't get much cooler than Alien unless it's a movie directed by James Cameron.
Yeah.
With a plural instead of a singular.
Indeed. But yeah, Event Horizon, I would be interested to have you watch that, because that's an interesting one. But after that, and this is what's mind-blowing, is he has this incredible resume, and then he goes straight to TV movies. And I'm very interested as to why he would have done that. I do not know why he did that.
I'm looking at his Wikipedia page and just looking through his films, and it abruptly cuts off at Event Horizon.
Yeah.
And it's like it says he was active until 2003.
Yeah,
that is fascinating.
He did all of these TV movies from 1998 through 2003, Horatio Hornblower movies. So again, we get back to the period piece. So it's so bizarre. I really want to go read more about him. Just because.
Yeah.
Oh, wow! Do you know who starred in the Hornblower series?
No.
And I never pronounce his name right. Ion Grafud, the guy who played Mr. Fantastic in the Fantastic Four movies.
Oh my God!
Yeah, he's right there. Horatio Hornblower, the Duel. Yeah. Okay. Get out. You're going to make a fantastic joke. But okay, so the thing is, we've established that Mollo, but that's so fascinating to me, because how many stories are like this in Hollywood, where somebody comes along and they just knock it out of the park. They make something that is, instantly genre shifting.
Right.
And then they're just
Star Wars that was his first movie right out of the gate. It's like you start with Star Wars.
I actually have an interesting story about that, about the costuming in specific. Is there was a time many years ago when I was in college where I was working for a regional live theater, and the head costume mistress, lovely lady, absolutely. I can't recall her name right now, but she really was. She was great. She was like she was a perfect mentor type person, even though I wasn't in costuming, who, she'd see you fumbling around backstage, and she's like, hey, oh, sweetie. Okay. This is how you do these things. And it's like, oh, okay. And I think she's the one that taught me how to spot stitch for the first time and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and it was great. But she relayed a story where, in the late 70s, she had been given an opportunity to go to London to work on a film, just in the costuming department. And she turned it down because they were starting a family, and she, the job wasn't going to pay a lot. And that film was Star Wars. And I was like, what? Really?
Oh, man.
And so that's how close she came to working with John Mollo. So I know, isn't that crazy? That is
I
absolutely
can't believe
nuts.
That's amazing. And you know what? How do you reconcile something like that? You're like, oh, well, all right. I mean, I guess starting a family is okay. It's an okay consolation prize to maybe working on Star Wars, I guess.
But before we go though, one of the things I want to say, because we're talking about how, his aesthetic went through and everything. I mean, let's get back to The Force Awakens, where, they basically do a soft reboot of Star Wars. I mean, those costumes are straight up. They could have been lifted from the 1970s. So,
oh, of course. And I mean, that was absolutely what they were going for, is bring it back to the basics. But I mean, more so than maybe any Star Wars movie since Empire, they really, really embraced that aesthetic.
So, with the little that you've seen from the images from The Last Jedi, do you see Mollo's influence continuing? I mean, obviously there's Luke, in the Jedi robes and everything, and, Rey's outfit is forever going to scream that sort of thing. But do you see a continued Mollo influence, or do you see things opening up a little bit based on what you've seen up to this point?
I think, I mean, there is no question that influence is going to be, it can't not be a part of this. And you see it in the military uniforms. You see, because it's all birthed from Star Wars, from The Empire Strikes Back, from that original trilogy, and that's where they're coming from. So you see the love for the original trilogy in these new movies, and you see the desire to embrace that old school aesthetic. And, a lot of this is coming, it's a sequel to Force Awakens, so you're seeing a lot of the same stuff from there. But there's no question. I mean, Mollo's influence is his fingerprints and the work that was done on that original trilogy in particular. I think Star Wars, and I'm sure we'll see some Empire influences in The Last Jedi, because how every movie since Empire Strikes Back, every Star Wars movie has owed something to The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, it's the Wrath of Khan of Star Wars.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, there's no question. It is an incredible legacy to leave behind, to basically single-handedly change the visual aesthetic of science fiction for all time, essentially. You see it everywhere.
And the thing is, we haven't even touched on, and I guess we'll just move past this to avoid any controversial comments, but basically they just rated his design notes for Rogue One. And I mean, there were 3 new costumes in that whole thing? Tops. So at least Force Awakens had a few more new costumes than Rogue One. Right.
And Rogue One, I mean, it's happening right around the time of A New Hope. And it's also it's a war film, quote unquote. It's the first Star Wars war movie, so it is very much in his wheelhouse, where he had a lot of love for that kind of design and military design. And Rogue One absolutely is taking its stride from that kind of aesthetic.
So here's a question for you then, because we both agree that the cinematography did not work to make the costumes look as lived in or believable, if you will,
sure,
in Return of the Jedi. Do you think that the military costumes on the Rebels that we see and those sorts of things in Rogue One, the way that they're shot, is more reflective of if they had successfully mimicked Mollo in Return of the Jedi instead of, I mean, but the thing is, even that seems kind of dismissive, because in Return of the Jedi, you have Jabba's court. And those costumes feel straight out of 77.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in that movie. I think a lot of it comes from, like, I'm thinking of like Leia and Han on Endor, and just kind of the simplistic. It looks very costumey to me. Like it looks very much like they were like, here's the costume that you're gonna put on, and where it looked a little too clean cut, a little too like, oh, here's a forest dress that you would wear. Leia. It just, you know what I mean? So,
no, I To refine that further, I think you're spot on, but I think that, and this is one of the things that, even costuming in live theater is a big thing, is distressing the stuff. That's what's missing in Return of the Jedi, is her costume is not distressed. Whereas Mollo distressed everything in Star Wars and Empire.
And Star Wars, and I mean, like, literally, those are Star Wars, Alien, Empire, right in a row, 3 of the top most influential sci-fi films of all time. So, I mean, literally, you're looking at, with the exception of Blade Runner right after Empire, you're looking at the aesthetic of science fiction films moving forward between Star Wars, Alien, Empire, and then Blade Runner, which he wasn't involved in. But it's like the guy basically pioneered that look.
One final thought. And, I know I'm sort of hung up on my live theater memories and stuff like that, but we always washed costumes, and Mollo's distressed his costumes. So there's got to be, I guess, a limit to how much you can wash them. How bad do you think that those costumes smelled by the end of filming?
I think the sweet scent of Harrison Ford's sweat is probably something that, when inhaled, will just make you a better actor. I can't imagine it would be anything less than that.
Nobody has any clear memories of filming because of his scent.
What
do you think David Prowse's costume smelled like?
It smelled like betrayal and spoilers.
That works for me. That really works for me. Well, Shawn, it has been an absolute delight talking about John Mollo and costuming.
Likewise.
Where can people find you?
Well, I am on the Nerd Party, as you mentioned. I'm on Missing Frames, which is a show where we watch movies we should have seen by this point in our lives. Definitely feel free to check that out. And then I'm on Twitter at @YayShawnDoorman. Tweet me. Just tweet me up. It'll be great.
You have 280 characters to do it in now.
Yeah, now 280 characters, so no excuse not to vent all your frustrations at me.
I do, and it feels good. And if you're on Twitter, you can also send me a note over at Kessel Junkie, and you can find me here on the network co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations, or you can find me co-hosting Words with Nerds with my pal Craig. So thank you, everybody, on this journey. If there's anything about the costumes that you feel we might have left out or you want to reach out to us about, again, the network is at Join Nerd Party on Twitter, the Nerd Party on Instagram, and you can send us an email at thenerdparty.com/contact or facebook.com/thenerdparty. So once again, thank you, Shawn, and keep wearing those fresh styles out in the stars.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.